Chapter 1. The Unexpected Encounter. Jasper had always been a simple man, content with the quiet rhythms of life on the outer fringes of the galaxy. His small farm, nestled on the outskirts of New Harlan, was the perfect place for someone like him. No bustling crowds, no government officials dictating his every move, just the endless stretch of open fields and a modest house where he could live out his days in relative peace. Life on New Harlan, a planet far removed from the grand cities of the Empire, moved at a different pace, one slower and gentler than the hectic whirlwinds of the galactic core. There was no pressure to impress or to climb the social ladder. No one cared about his background or the empty pockets that had been passed down to him. He had always found solace in that anonymity, in the sheer simplicity of doing what needed to be done, day in and day out, to keep things running. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting. But it was his, and that had always been enough. The days for Jasper followed a predictable routine, tending to his crops, fixing broken fences, making sure the irrigation system worked, the same simple chores. When he wasn't working on the farm, he'd find himself lost in his thoughts, often gazing out at the horizon, imagining the vastness of the universe that stretched far beyond his little corner of it. Sometimes, he'd catch glimpses of the stars at night, wondering about the distant worlds, the cities brimming with life, the strange alien races, and all the adventures he could never experience. He'd laugh at the thought he was just a simple farm boy, far too grounded to be swept up into anything that exciting. He had his routine, and that was enough for him. Or so he thought. It was on a quiet afternoon in late summer when everything changed. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the vast plains, the kind of warmth that seemed to soak into the very bones of the land. Jasper had been fixing the irrigation system again, cursing under his breath as he tried to reconnect a broken valve that kept leaking water out across the fields. It was a simple task, but one that needed to be done. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he wiped his brow, frustrated by the stubborn mechanism that refused to cooperate. He had been so focused on the task at hand that he didn't notice the strange sound that began to pierce through the familiar silence of his surroundings. At first, it was faint, almost inaudible, barely rising above the hum of the planet's natural atmosphere. But as it grew louder, it became impossible to ignore. It was a low, almost guttural growl, like something in pain, followed by a series of whimpers and ragged breathing. Jasper froze. The sound was coming from the woods to the east of his farm. He had never heard anything like it before, certainly nothing that belonged to any of the native wildlife he was accustomed to. It didn't sound like the cries of the local fauna, nor did it match anything that could be considered a normal predator on New Harlan. His heart skipped a beat as he felt an instinctive tug in his chest. Without thinking, he wiped the dirt from his hands and grabbed his old utility belt, cinching it around his waist, before making his way toward the source of the sound. The path to the woods was overgrown, the thick underbrush fighting back against his steps as he pushed forward. The trees here were dense, their roots winding around the rocky earth, twisting and curving in unnatural patterns, a result of the planet's strange gravitational forces. The air was thick and damp, the scent of fresh pine mixing with something else, something metallic and sharp. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the sounds grew more distinct, more desperate, urging him onward. Whatever it was, it sounded injured, trapped, and it didn't belong here. Jasper's curiosity and concern led him forward, though he couldn't shake the strange feeling gnawing at him, the sense that whatever lay ahead was going to be more than he had bargained for. Finally, he reached a clearing, and there, at the edge of the woods, he saw it. The creature was lying on its side, massive and sleek, covered in a coat of fur as black as the void of space. Its body was contorted in an unnatural position, a clear sign that it had been injured badly. The beast was unlike anything he had ever seen before. It wasn't like the wild animals he had encountered in the past, those he could recognize. This was something else entirely. Its elongated body was covered in dark scales that shimmered in the dim light, and its eyes, wide with pain and fear, gleamed in the shadows. The creature's breathing was labored, each inhale a painful rasp, and its large, sharp claws dug into the earth as if trying to push itself up. Jasper's first instinct was to run. A creature like that, one so large and so obviously dangerous, was not something he could handle on his own. He should leave it be. It was probably some kind of alien species that had wandered too far from its natural habitat, and there was no telling what it could do to him. But then the creature let out another weak whimper, and something in Jasper's chest shifted. He didn't know why, but he couldn't walk away. He had never been the type of man to leave something suffering, no matter what it was, no matter how dangerous. He approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance, watching the creature's every move. Its eyes flicked up to meet his, a moment of recognition passing between them. Despite its obvious pain, there was something almost human in its gaze, a kind of vulnerability that made Jasper hesitate. He could feel its desperation. The beast wasn't looking for a fight. It was simply trying to survive. Its body trembled as it tried to push itself up, but a deep, guttural growl escaped it, and it collapsed back to the ground with a painful grunt. Jasper swallowed hard. "You're not from around here, are you?" he muttered under his breath, taking another cautious step forward. His mind raced. He needed to help it. It was his only choice. He wasn't a doctor, but he had some experience tending to injured animals back on Earth. He could at least try to help. He knelt down, carefully inspecting the beast's wound. The gash across its side was deep, the flesh torn open by something sharp, likely a weapon of some sort. It was already starting to bleed, and the blood was thick, dark red, almost black, and smelled metallic. Jasper winced. It was bad, but not impossible to treat. He rummaged through his belt, pulling out a field medical kit he kept for emergencies, hoping it would be enough. He wasn't sure what kind of creatures inhabited New Harlan, let alone what kind of medicine might work, but the beast's condition was deteriorating rapidly, and he couldn't stand by and watch it suffer. He applied pressure to the wound, cleaning it the best he could with the tools at his disposal, murmuring reassuring words to the creature. "Easy now. I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, his voice steady. The beast's eyes narrowed slightly, but it seemed to trust him enough not to lash out, though its body was still tense with fear. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of creature he was dealing with. This wasn't just some wild animal, it was something much more intelligent and much more dangerous. Yet there was a tenderness to it that defied its monstrous appearance. It was almost as though it understood that he was trying to help. Maybe it was some kind of alien species, he mused, one that had gotten injured in a skirmish or an attack. But who or what could have done this to it? The creature's breathing became steadier as Jasper applied a makeshift bandage to the wound. It was clear that the beast wasn't out of danger yet, but at least he had stopped the bleeding. Jasper sat back on his heels, looking over the creature carefully. It seemed calmer now, though still obviously weak, its head resting against the ground as it looked up at him with those large, intelligent eyes. It let out a soft, rumbling sound that could have been a purr, and Jasper allowed himself a small sigh of relief. "I'll get you somewhere safe," he promised, standing up carefully. "You're not going to die here. I won't let that happen." As Jasper looked around the clearing, trying to figure out how to move the beast, he heard the sound of something heavy crashing through the woods. His heart skipped a beat as he turned toward the sound. From the thick trees, a figure emerged. A human figure, tall and imposing, wearing dark robes embroidered with gold patterns. The person was walking toward him with purpose, their presence radiating authority. The creature growled softly, its body tensing again, but it didn't move. Jasper stood up slowly, feeling a strange chill run down his spine. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice steady but laced with caution. The figure stopped just a few feet away, their expression unreadable behind the shadow of their hood. "You are lucky," the voice said, smooth and deep. Not many humans would dare to interfere with the affairs of the Baroness's pet. Jasper blinked, his mind struggling to keep up. "The Baroness?" he asked, confusion clouding his thoughts. "This thing is a pet." The figure nodded. "Yes, and you have just saved it." The hooded figure's lips curled into something like a smile, but it wasn't one of kindness. "For that, you may be of use. Come with me. There is much you don't understand." Jasper's heart raced as he stared at the injured beast. He hadn't realized what he had just gotten himself into. This was no ordinary animal, it was the pet of someone powerful, someone with a title. And he had no idea what kind of trouble his actions were about to bring. But he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again. Jasper's confusion only deepened as the figure in the dark robes approached. He took a cautious step backward, his hand instinctively reaching for the small, rusty blade he kept tucked into his belt. It was more for show than anything. He had no training with weapons, but in this moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The stranger moved closer, and the air around him seemed to grow colder, charged with an unnatural energy. Despite the heavy cloak, there was an undeniable aura of authority around him, and the sheer confidence in his movements made Jasper's stomach knot. "The Baroness's pet," the stranger repeated, his voice low and smooth, like velvet wrapped around steel. "You've made quite the mistake, human, and you will pay for it, though not in the way you think." Jasper's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade, though he knew deep down it was useless. There was something about the figure, something in his bearing that suggested he wasn't just a simple traveler or someone lost in the woods. He was important, powerful even, and for reasons Jasper couldn't fathom. The creature he had just saved seemed to hold some kind of immense significance. "Wait," Jasper said, raising his hands in a gesture of calm. "I didn't know. What is this? Who are you?" His voice came out a little shakier than he'd intended, but it was too late to hide his growing fear. The figure stopped in front of him, towering over Jasper. He reached up, pulling back the hood of his robe to reveal a face both human and alien, with sharp features, pale skin, and a pair of eyes that gleamed like gemstones. The eyes didn't just stare, they pierced through Jasper, as though reading every thought he had ever had, every secret he had ever kept. "I am Turon, a servant to the Baroness," he said, his voice even colder now. "And you, human, have found something that was never meant for you. The creature you've saved, her pet, is no mere beast. It's an extension of her will, and she does not tolerate interference. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Jasper swallowed hard, his mind spinning. He had saved this creature, this pet, but he had no idea what it meant. The beast, which had looked so vulnerable and defenseless in that moment, was more than just an animal. It was something precious, something that belonged to a person who, apparently, wielded far more power than Jasper could comprehend. The weight of the situation was starting to sink in, and with it, the realization that his life had just taken a dangerous turn. I didn't know," Jasper said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just saw an injured animal and helped. I didn't know it was yours or hers." Taran's eyes narrowed, studying him with a curious, calculating look. There was no pity in his gaze, only the cold, detached logic of someone who knew how the world worked. To him, Jasper was nothing more than an inconvenience, a blip in the grander scheme of things. But Jasper couldn't help but feel the weight of the man's judgment, the way his words lingered in the air like a heavy sentence. "You didn't know, but you still interfered," Taran said slowly, almost as if savoring the words. "Now, you must face the consequences. But the Baroness is not an unreasonable woman. She might yet find a use for you." The tension in the air thickened. Jasper felt a shiver run down his spine as the weight of Taran's words sank in. Use for him? What did that mean? Was this just about the creature, or was there more to it? What kind of person was this Baroness, who had a pet so precious that she could send her servants to retrieve it from a simple farm boy? Before he could ask another question, Taran turned abruptly and gestured for Jasper to follow him. "Come, you'll meet her now. The Baroness is not a woman who likes to be kept waiting." Jasper hesitated, torn between the instinct to run and the knowledge that he had no choice but to go with Taran. The path ahead was unclear, and his body ached with the desire to flee, but the look in the servant's eyes told him that resistance would only make things worse. So, with a deep breath, Jasper took the first step toward whatever unknown future awaited him. Chapter 2. A Dangerous Bargain. The journey to wherever Taran was taking him felt surreal. The woods around them seemed to stretch endlessly, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant cry of a creature Jasper couldn't identify. He had been walking for what seemed like hours, though it could have been much less time. His legs were sore, his mind still reeling from the strange encounter, and his thoughts kept returning to the creature he had saved. Despite its monstrous appearance, there was something strangely gentle about the beast, and Jasper couldn't shake the image of its injured form lying helplessly in the woods. He had acted instinctively, wanting only to help. But now, the consequences of that decision loomed large before him. Taran led him through a thick thicket of trees, toward the base of a cliff that rose dramatically from the ground. It wasn't long before Jasper saw it. A massive structure, nestled high on the cliffside, its walls gleaming with a strange iridescence. The architecture was unlike anything Jasper had ever seen. It was sleek, organic in design, with curves that seemed to grow out of the rock itself. The building looked ancient yet advanced, as though it had been shaped by forces beyond human comprehension. There was an ethereal quality to it, as though it existed in two dimensions at once, blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. The air around the building was charged with an odd energy, and Jasper could feel his pulse quicken as they neared. He didn't know what to expect, but he was beginning to get the sense that this was not a place where simple farm boys belonged. The power of the Baroness was tangible, and he was about to step into her world. Taran didn't speak as they approached the entrance. He moved with purpose, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. The doors of the building slid open with a sound that seemed to reverberate in the air, the motion so smooth and silent that it felt almost unnatural. Beyond the doors was a grand hall, its walls lined with strange tapestries and glowing symbols Jasper couldn't begin to understand. The floor beneath their feet was polished stone, cool and smooth, reflecting the dim light of the room. In the center of the hall stood a figure tall and regal, her presence commanding, her gaze fixed on Jasper with an intensity that made him feel like he was being dissected. The woman before him was nothing short of breathtaking. She was dressed in a gown that shimmered with an otherworldly quality, its fabric shifting with the light, as though it were alive. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hair, long and flowing, cascaded down her back like liquid silver. But it was her eyes that seemed to glow with a faint, ethereal light that held Jasper's attention. They were sharp, calculating, and full of a power that made him feel small and insignificant in her presence. Taran bowed low before her, his voice respectful. "Baroness, I have brought him as you requested." The woman Baroness apparently did not acknowledge Taran immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on Jasper, as if studying him, assessing him in ways he could not comprehend. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, before she finally spoke, her voice smooth, cool, and almost musical. "You," she said, her gaze piercing. "You are the one who saved my pet." Jasper swallowed, his throat dry. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He couldn't quite get the words out. There was an overwhelming weight to her presence, an aura of danger and allure that made his knees feel weak. "I didn't know it was yours, ma'am," he stammered. "I just saw an animal in need. I didn't think." The Baroness's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "You didn't think, indeed. And yet, here you are. You've saved something that is not just an animal, but an extension of my will, an extension of my power. You've made yourself a part of my world, whether you realize it or not." Jasper took a step back, his mind racing. "I didn't mean to interfere with anything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to help." She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his, and Jasper felt his breath catch in his throat. There was no escaping it now. He had been thrust into this world of power and secrets, and he had no idea how he was supposed to navigate it. But one thing was certain: he was not going to be allowed to leave so easily. "I'm sure you didn't," the Baroness said, her tone turning softer, though still full of an authority that made it impossible to ignore. "But you've earned a place here now, whether you wish it or not. And perhaps you will come to understand why that is." Jasper felt a strange tug in his chest. There was something compelling about her, something that drew him in despite his better judgment. But at the same time, a part of him wanted to run. The question was, could he ever truly escape the path that had been set before him? Jasper stood frozen in the presence of the Baroness, his mind struggling to process the weight of her words. He had been dragged into something far beyond his understanding, a situation he had never expected. He was no longer just a humble farm boy. In this moment, he felt like an insignificant pawn in a game he didn't know how to play. His chest tightened with anxiety, and the cold, calculating eyes of the Baroness bore into him, sending an almost tangible pressure over him. "You don't understand the significance of what you've done," she continued, her voice smooth and composed. But there was an edge to it now, a hint of something deeper beneath the surface. "You've saved my pet. You've saved something that holds power, influence, and access to things most can only dream of. And now, you are part of that world." Jasper took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He had no idea what was going on, what was expected of him, or even what the consequences might be for saving the beast. All he knew was that the moment he had chosen to help, everything had shifted. His simple, quiet life had been obliterated in an instant. The Baroness stepped closer, her presence commanding, almost suffocating. I could have you removed from this place, sent back to your farm, and you'd never see me or my pet again. But, you see, you've done something most wouldn't have done. You've proven yourself capable of understanding compassion, even in the face of danger. That's not something I can easily overlook. She paused, her gaze flickering toward Turan, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, his eyes cold and impassive as ever. Turan, she said, her voice suddenly sharp. Bring him to the chambers. I will speak with him alone. Turan nodded without a word and gestured for Jasper to follow. Jasper didn't hesitate. His mind was still racing, but he had no choice but to comply. The Baroness's words lingered in his mind like an unshakable shadow, but her eyes, those glowing, predatory eyes, made it clear that there was no room for negotiation. Jasper was part of her world now, whether he liked it or not. As Turan led him through the labyrinthine halls of the Baroness's palace, Jasper couldn't help but wonder just how deep this web of power and influence went. The walls around him were adorned with strange, alien art, their intricate designs pulsating with an otherworldly glow. The air in the palace was thick with the scent of exotic flowers and the hum of distant machinery. Every step he took felt heavier, as though he were moving deeper into a world he would never be able to escape. Eventually, they arrived at a set of large, ornate doors, adorned with symbols that seemed to shimmer with energy. Turan motioned for Jasper to enter, and without a word, the doors slowly opened. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a strange bioluminescent glow, the furniture minimal but luxurious. A large, round table stood in the center, and beyond it, a massive window opened up to a view of the planet below, its sprawling landscapes stretching out in the distance. The Baroness was seated at the table, her posture regal and poised, her gaze never leaving Jasper as he entered. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and control. She had already assumed her position, her dominance in this encounter. Jasper felt it acutely, as though every step he took closer to her was one more step into her world, a world he had no control over. Sit, she commanded softly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. Jasper did as instructed, pulling out the chair opposite her and taking a seat. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating, and for the first time, he realized just how far out of his depth he truly was. The Baroness studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You saved my pet. That is no small thing. But do you understand what that means? Her voice was calm, but there was an undertone of something more, something dangerous, something that hinted at a power she wielded effortlessly. I didn't mean to get involved, Jasper said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. I just saw an animal in need. I didn't know it was yours or that it was anything special. The Baroness's lips curled into a slight smile. Of course you didn't. You're not from the elite circles. You don't know who I am or what I represent. But that doesn't change the fact that you've now entered my world, whether by choice or by accident. And once you've crossed that threshold, there's no turning back. Jasper's stomach tightened. What do you want from me? Why bring me here? Why save that creature? I want something simple, Jasper, she said, her voice suddenly softer. I want a partner, someone who can understand the responsibilities I bear. My pet, my beast, as you called it, is not just an animal. It is an extension of my power, my will. And the fact that you saved it, without any thought for the consequences, tells me that you might have the courage to understand my plight. I need someone who doesn't want to control me, who doesn't want my wealth or my position. Someone who can be by my side without an agenda. Jasper's heart raced as he took in her words. Was she asking for more than just protection? Was she asking for something more personal? More emotional? I don't know what I can offer you, Jasper said, his voice quieter now, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. I'm just a mechanic, a farmer. I'm not someone with power or influence. The Baroness stood and walked over to the window, her silhouette bathed in the soft glow of the planet below. Neither am I, she said softly, almost to herself. I've spent my life building an empire, surrounding myself with people who want to use me, to control me. But I've never had someone who sees me for who I truly am. Someone who can stand by me without wanting something in return. That's what I need." Jasper felt a pang of sympathy, but also a deep sense of unease. "What are you asking of me?" he said, the words heavy in the air. "I'm asking for your help," she said, turning to face him. "Not just as a servant, not just as a tool to be used, but as a partner. I don't know what the future holds, but I can't do this alone." Jasper sat in stunned silence, trying to process the enormity of what was being asked of him. This wasn't just about saving a creature anymore, it was about becoming a part of something far larger than himself. It was about stepping into a life of power, danger, and responsibility. "You have no idea what you're offering," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. The Baroness smiled faintly. "I think you have an idea. And I think, deep down, you know that this is not something you can walk away from. You've already made your choice by saving my pet. Now, I offer you a chance to choose again, to choose what kind of future you want." Jasper's mind spun. The weight of the decision was suffocating, but there was a part of him that knew he couldn't say no. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but he knew that there was no turning back now. "I'll stay," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I'll help you." The Baroness's eyes softened for the first time since he had met her, a flicker of gratitude crossing her face. "Thank you, Jasper. You have no idea what this means." Chapter 3. Into the Unknown. Jasper sat in silence for a long moment, trying to wrap his mind around what had just happened. His life had been irrevocably altered in a matter of hours, from being an inconspicuous farm mechanic to someone involved in the machinations of a powerful Baroness. He had barely had a chance to process everything when the weight of the situation came crashing down on him. He had entered a world where the stakes were much higher than any broken-down vehicle or malfunctioning machine he had ever fixed. The Baroness stood by the window, her posture regal, as though she were a queen in her own right, surveying the vast expanse of land below her. The planet stretched out before them, a beautiful, desolate world that felt both foreign and familiar at once. The quiet beauty of it seemed at odds with the power and tension that hung in the air inside her chamber. Jasper's gaze shifted between the Baroness and the room around him. This was not just a palace, it was a fortress, a place designed to reflect the immense power she commanded. The walls, decorated with strange, alien tapestries, seemed to shimmer with their own kind of energy, as though they had been woven not only with fabric, but with the very essence of the Baroness's power. The entire room felt alive, humming with a quiet intensity. The Baroness turned from the window and faced him, her eyes dark and intense. "We've entered a new phase now, Jasper," she said, her voice measured but heavy with meaning. "You've made a choice, and it will change everything for both of us." Jasper nodded, his mind still racing, trying to process her words, the gravity of what he had just agreed to. He wasn't entirely sure what this new phase meant, but he knew one thing: it wasn't going to be easy. There were still too many unknowns, too many dangers that lurked just out of sight. "Do you have any idea what you've agreed to?" the Baroness continued, her tone softening slightly. "I'm not asking you to simply serve me. I'm asking you to step into a world that's far beyond what you've known. This is not just about saving a pet anymore. This is about standing by my side as I navigate the treacherous politics of the galactic elite. It's about fighting battles, political, personal, and maybe even physical, that we cannot afford to lose." Jasper felt a shiver run down his spine. He hadn't fully understood the weight of her words until now. This wasn't just about helping her out of a bind. It wasn't just about a wounded creature. This was about something much larger, something that could put both their lives at risk. "I know what you're asking," he said slowly, standing up. "And I'm not sure if I'm ready for all of that, but I'll stand with you. You help me understand that this, whatever this is, could be worth it. I don't know how to navigate a world like yours, but I'll learn." The Baroness looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile that seemed almost approving. "Good. Because in this world, you'll need more than just strength. You'll need your wits, your cunning, and your ability to trust the people you choose to stand with. You have no idea how many have come before you, thinking they could help me. But in the end, they were only looking to take what they could." Jasper met her gaze, steady and resolute. "I'm not like them. I just want to help." The Baroness's smile widened slightly, but there was no warmth in it, only the recognition of a bond that had been forged in an unlikely place, under unlikely circumstances. "Then let us begin," she said softly. "The game has started, and now, we must play." Chapter 4: The Price of Loyalty. Days passed, and the palace became a blur of lessons, new experiences, and mounting tension. Jasper had underestimated just how deep the web of politics and power ran, and how much of it was hidden behind the opulent facade of the Baroness's life. His role had shifted from an outsider to a confidant, and his presence at her side was no longer an accident, it was deliberate. He had become part of her inner circle, someone she relied on for counsel, and, in some strange way, someone she had come to trust. But that trust came with a price that Jasper wasn't fully prepared to pay. The Baroness, despite her beauty and poise, was not simply a figurehead. She was a master of manipulation, a woman who had learned how to play the game of politics and power with deadly precision. She had made enemies over the years, many of them, and they were always lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jasper was constantly reminded of the fragile nature of this new life he had entered. Every conversation, every decision, seemed to carry the weight of hundreds of hidden motives. No one was ever who they seemed to be. One evening, as Jasper sat in a lavish room with a drink in hand, the Baroness walked in, her face drawn and tense. Her usual calm demeanor had been replaced with something darker, a storm brewing behind her eyes. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "It's happening," she said, her voice low and filled with an edge of anger. "The faction that's been trying to control me made their move. I need you to come with me. Now." Jasper's heart raced as he set the drink down, immediately understanding the gravity of her words. The quiet political games they had been playing had just escalated into something far more dangerous. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the sudden fear he felt. She met his gaze with a cold intensity. "We need to strike first, Jasper. We cannot wait for them to come to us. We need to hit them where it hurts." They moved quickly, navigating the palace halls with the same calculated precision. Taran, ever watchful, appeared at their side, his presence both a reassurance and a reminder of the stakes at hand. Jasper had learned quickly that Taran was not just a servant, he was an enforcer, a protector, and he was someone who knew how to operate in the shadows. The Baroness led them to a hidden control room, a space filled with glowing screens and holographic projections. Jasper's breath caught as he realized the depth of the operations she had running behind the scenes. This wasn't just a palace. It was a fortress, a command center for an empire of influence and power. The Baroness had orchestrated everything with careful precision. "Tell me what we need to do," Jasper said, the tension thick in the air. "We need to stop them." The Baroness nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "We have information about their next move. We can intercept them before they even get a chance to act." With a few keystrokes, the screens flickered, revealing a network of coordinates and encrypted messages. Jasper could see the plans unfolding before him, plans to undermine the Baroness's control, to sabotage everything she had worked for. The realization hit him like a hammer. This wasn't just about political games. This was about survival. And in this world, survival meant being able to strike first, before anyone could strike at you. The next hours passed in a blur of strategy, code-breaking, and calculated risk. With Taran's guidance, Jasper had quickly learned to trust his instincts, following the Baroness's lead as they executed their plan. Every move they made had to be precise. One mistake, one slip-up, and they could lose everything. It was a high-stakes game, and the odds were against them. But as the night wore on, Jasper felt a sense of purpose take root within him. This was no longer about the creature he had saved. This was about fighting for something greater than himself. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Baroness leaned back in her chair, her fingers still hovering over the control panel. "It's done," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and satisfaction. "We've won this round." Jasper exhaled a long breath, the tension in his body finally beginning to ease. He had been part of something bigger than he ever could have imagined, and for the first time, he understood the true price of loyalty. It wasn't just about standing by someone's side. It was about making the tough decisions, the ones that would shape the future. The Baroness turned to him, her expression softer than it had been when he first met her. "You've done well, Jasper. I couldn't have done this without you." Jasper nodded, a sense of accomplishment swelling inside him, though it was tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. There was always more to lose, always more to gain, and in this world of power, the game was never truly finished. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'm glad I could help." As the days stretched on and they continued to move through the dangerous political landscape that lay ahead, Jasper knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same. He had stepped into the unknown, and now there was no turning back. But for better or worse, he had chosen his path, and there was no telling where it would lead.